You think you're strong because you hit the gym 3 times a week. Maybe you've got abs, a protein shake, and a smartwatch counting your steps. But what if I told you that a prehistoric teenager, barefoot, hungry, and armed with a sharpened rock, could outlast you in almost every way? They didn't have supplements, squat racks, or Spotify playlists. But they could haul a dead deer uphill, build a fire from scratch, and fight off a predator all before breakfast. So, what happened to us? Why are we so soft compared to them? Let's find out. Imagine you're a newborn, not in a hospital, not in a warm crib, but on a dirt floor, under a rocky overhang, with icy wind clawing at your tiny body. There's no nurse waiting to swaddle you, no beeping monitors, no heated blankets. Just skin, stone, and survival. Your first few hours of life, they're a fight. You can't regulate your temperature. Your mother is bleeding, exhausted, barely conscious. And predators, wolves, hyenas, saber-toothed cats, they smell everything. If you make it through the night, that's your first win. But it's only the beginning. Because prehistoric childhood wasn't a cozy progression from diapers to daycare. It was more like boot camp, except no one was there to hold your hand. By age 2, you were crawling through forests, chewing roots, and watching grown-ups butcher meat. By 4, you might be carrying firewood. By 6, helping your mother gather food. There was no such thing as age-appropriate. If you could walk, you could work. If you could speak, you could warn. And if you couldn't keep up, the group didn't wait. And forget playpens. Your playground was the forest floor, sharp sticks, poisonous berries, animal scat. You didn't have baby gates, you had instincts. Touch the wrong thing, you learned once, or you didn't survive to learn at all. Even toys, if we can call them that, were training tools. A carved bone wasn't just for fun, it taught you how to grip a weapon. Mimicking a hunter wasn't cute, it was rehearsal. Every scrape toughened your skin, every fall taught balance. Fear wasn't something to avoid, it was something to listen to. You were being shaped by your environment every second. Modern kids are raised in padded corners. Prehistoric kids were raised in corners where something watched from the shadows. And yet they adapted, they didn't just survive. They became strong, fast, alert, durable. Because childhood wasn't preparation for life. It was already life. Let's be honest, if your prehistoric ancestor stood next to you right now, you'd probably look soft. Not because you're lazy, but because your body never had to survive what theirs did. They weren't working out, they were the workout. Carrying heavy loads for miles wasn't resistance training, it was Tuesday. Running wasn't for cardio, it was to chase prey or to avoid being chased. Their gym was the world itself. Climbing trees to escape predators. Crawling through underbrush to avoid detection. Dragging animal carcasses uphill. Smashing bone with rocks to get marrow. Walking barefoot over stone, ice, heat. No special shoes, no protein powder, no 8-week programs. Just instinct, pressure, and pain every single day. And because survival didn't wait for comfort, their bodies adapted hard and fast. Wide shoulders, dense bones, stronger joints. Muscle that wasn't aesthetic, it was functional. Built through necessity, not vanity. Need to pull yourself up a cliff? You'd better have the grip strength of a gorilla. Need to carry your injured cousin for 2 miles? No problem, you've done worse with meat. Even their lungs were built different. Running while tracking prey meant breathing through fatigue, hunger, and fear, sometimes for hours. It wasn't hit, it was hunt until you die training. And the most shocking part, this wasn't just the warriors. It was the mothers, the elders, the teenagers, everyone. Our ancestors didn't schedule exercise. They exercised simply by existing. Compare that to today, where we consider 10,000 steps an achievement. They were doing that before breakfast, barefoot, while carrying something twice their weight. That's not a motivational quote. That's evolutionary fact. You weren't built for a chair. You were built for chaos because your ancestors had no other choice. Their world forced them into strength. And if you've ever wondered why comfort makes you restless, that's your biology screaming, this isn't what we were made for. When we talk about mental toughness, today we picture cold showers, productivity hacks, or maybe a podcast about resilience. But for your prehistoric ancestors, mental strength wasn't a personality trait, it was survival fuel. Imagine this. You haven't eaten in 2 days. Your feet are blistered. Your child is crying. And you just spotted a predator's tracks in the snow. What do? You don't cry. You don't scroll. You move. Because in that moment, hesitation meant death. Mental strength wasn't about suppressing feelings. It was about acting despite them. Fear, you had it, but you hunted anyway. Exhaustion, it didn't matter. The tribe needed firewood. Grief, you buried your child and kept gathering roots. There was no taking a day. There was no one else coming. Their resilience was primal, not performative. And here's the thing, it wasn't separate from the body. Because when your body is in constant hardship, your mind becomes forged by fire. Your ancestors didn't talk about mindset. They lived it. Every day was a test of pain tolerance, focus, discipline. Not for aesthetics, not for goals, but because failure meant someone you loved might not eat tonight. They didn't meditate. They hunted in silence, listening to wind patterns and animal calls like a living radar. They didn't do breath work. They just had to control their breathing while hiding motionless in a bush, waiting to stab a boar with a sharpened stick. This was the original mind-body connection. You didn't strengthen one without the other. Today, we treat strength and calmness like separate apps. They treated them like organs, interlinked, trained together. If your body gave out, your mind had to take over. If your mind wavered, your body had to keep going. They couldn't afford doubt. They had instinct, grit, repetition. And maybe you still have that in you too. Buried under comfort. Waiting. Let's be real. You don't have to do anything anymore. Not really. Feeling hungry. Click a button, food shows up. Cold. There's a thermostat. Bored. Scroll your thumb. A million videos ready to distract you. The world today is built to remove friction, to soften every sharp edge of discomfort. And on the surface, that sounds like a good thing. But here's the catch. You were designed biologically, neurologically, to respond to challenge. Comfort isn't your natural state. Struggle is. Your prehistoric ancestors woke up every morning in danger. Their lives were a test of skill, of strength, of will. Yours. You're losing muscle because your chair is too comfortable. You're anxious because your brain hasn't had a real problem to solve all week. You feel lost because you're swimming in convenience. See the irony. The more we removed hardship from our lives, the more we removed meaning too. Because hardship didn't just hurt, it shaped. Climbing a hill with a child strapped to your back wasn't just exhausting. It was identity. It was connection. It was growth, physical and emotional. But now, we hire someone. We automate it. We outsource our strength and call it efficiency. The result? A generation with faster tools and weaker wills. With more resources and less resilience. We're not lazy because we're bad people. We're lazy because nothing around us requires otherwise. Our ancestors didn't need motivation speeches. They had reasons. Fire, hunger, survival. They had to move. We choose whether to, and we usually don't. And slowly, quietly, that choice has eroded your edge. But here's the good news. If softness is learned, then so is strength. And buried under that comfort, your fire still smolders. You just have to choose to relight it. Here's a weird truth. You're carrying a prehistoric engine inside a modern shell. And that engine, it's built for movement. Hunting, climbing, hauling, fleeing, fighting, enduring. Your body was forged by hundreds of thousands of years of survival demands. But now, that engine's stuck in traffic, behind a desk, bent over a glowing rectangle for 9 hours a day. And the worst part, you probably think you're tired because you used it. But really, you're tired because you didn't. Because modern fatigue often isn't depletion, it's stagnation. Ask your ancestors. They carried water for miles, uphill, while wounded. They hunted on empty stomachs. They crossed frozen rivers barefoot with a child tied to their chest. You complain about 3 flights of stairs. And again, it's not your fault. But it is your problem. Because every time you let a convenience take over a skill, you lose part of yourself. Physical strength wasn't optional in the Paleolithic world. It was survival currency. And it wasn't just the buff ones. Even elders had sinew and grit from decades of motion. Even children could run for miles without whining. Their play was practice for the hunt. Your play is tapping a screen. And your muscles. They haven't disappeared. They've just dozed off. They're waiting deep inside your frame to be woken up. But here, the trick. You don't need a gym membership. You don't need protein shakes or perfect lighting. You need a reason. Because your biology isn't inspired by six-packs. It's inspired by necessity. Start walking everywhere. Start carrying things instead of rolling them. Start sweating daily, not to look good, but to remember what you are. You're not made of glass. You're made of iron and fire, and stories written in scars. You just forgot. Because comfort made you forget. Let's talk about pain. Not the kind you post online. Not the kind you medicate or numb, or just push through. I mean real pain, the kind that teaches. Prehistoric humans lived with it constantly. They didn't run from discomfort. They ran with it, alongside it, sometimes because of it. A torn muscle, that meant walk slower, not stop. A broken rib, learn to breathe shallower and still keep going. Blisters, cuts, sprains, infections, these weren't reasons to quit. They were part of the syllabus. Because in the Paleolithic classroom, pain was the professor. It taught boundaries, taught risk management, taught how far you could go before things broke, and sometimes even after. You've been taught pain is an error, an emergency, a glitch to be avoided at all costs. We've created a world where discomfort is unacceptable. Chairs must be soft. Temperatures must be perfect. Shoes must be cushioned. Food must be effortless. But here's what that does. It confuses your body. It removes calibration. You stop knowing what real danger feels like, because everything becomes a crisis. A skipped meal feels like starvation. A tough workout feels like punishment. A bad night of sleep becomes a mental health spiral. But your ancestors, they were sleep-deprived, hungry, sore, cold, and bleeding, and still hunting. still raising kids, still building tools, still surviving. Why? Because they didn't treat pain like an enemy. They treated it like a compass. A warning, not a wall. And when you learn that again, really feel that again, everything changes. You stop flinching at challenge. You stop avoiding stress. You start leaning in. Because pain isn't always the sign something's wrong. Sometimes it's proof you're doing something right. The weight you carry is shaping you. Don't drop it just because it hurts. So if your attention feels scattered, if your thoughts feel noisy, if your brain feels like it's not enough, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's the system. And maybe it's time to start listening to the ancient rhythms again. Because if your brain feels tired in the modern world, it's probably just homesick for the fire. So here's the hard truth. You're not weak because you can't run 20 miles barefoot. You're not broken because you feel tired after a 10-hour desk shift. And you're not soft because your world doesn't demand fire starting, hunting, or hauling stone. But you are something else. You're disconnected from your body, from your instincts, from your tribe, from the rhythm that shaped every nerve, every muscle, every heartbeat you carry. Your ancestors weren't superhuman. They were just fully human, living in the conditions that forged the human body and mind. If this woke something up inside you, subscribe. We dig into forgotten truths, ancient stories, and the raw, powerful history that made us who we are. And if you know someone scrolling themselves into a stupor, send this to them. Let them feel the weight of what we've lost and what we can still reclaim. Because this isn't about nostalgia. It's about reconnection. Thanks for watching. Sleep like the warrior you were born from.